Ella es Marta y ella es Azucena y esto es Naturaleza entre líneas. Bueno, pues hoy estamos aquí de nuevo y tenemos una invitada muy especial, que es Flyn, con la que vamos a hablar de su último libro, Islas del abandono. Sí, aquí lo tenemos. Y bueno, pues esta entrevista la vamos a hacer en inglés y luego ya la subtitularemos para que todos la podáis ver. So, hello, Carl. Thank you for being with us today. We're very honored to have you because your work is very interesting.
That's very kind of you. Thanks for having me.
Carl Flynn is a writer and journalist from the Highlands in Scotland. That personally it's my favorite place in the world. Yeah. I'm obsessed with Scotland. But yeah, we'd love to do the interview there in Scotland with you, but we can't, unfortunately. So, maybe next time. Maybe next time. Well, she's specialized in nonfiction books and investigative journalism. She has many recognitions for her work, and her articles have been published in many relevant newspapers and magazines like The Economist. We are very happy today to have her because of her last book, Islands of Abandonment, that in Spain it's edited by Capitán Swing. We wanted to ask you some questions about the book that we have enjoyed a lot. Yes. And we think it's very important and relevant for the time we are living. So the first question. Yes, the first question is, what was your goal with this book?
That's an interesting question because I find when I'm writing that often my goals do not make themselves obvious until quite far down the process. So I think to begin with, I knew that the locations I was writing about had some important emotional and intellectual interest to me, and that the pattern of writing the book was the process through which I learned what my goals were. And ultimately, the book became about how we value and recognize the world around us, and how the locations that might not seem to be valuable may turn out to be the locations that offer us a great deal of hope and indeed sort of answers about the future of the planet in a human impacted place. I guess it was also an exercise in finding hope when writing or knowing about the environment in the current circumstances can be full of despair. And so to me, I think looking for reasons to carry on and to stay motivated to attempt to change things about the planet or to stop damaging the planet, I need to find motivation, and the motivation that I need comes from realizing that all is not lost.
Mm-hmm. That's very important and very inspiring too. So we wanted to know which was your criterion to choose the places that appear in the book. Did you have to choose between many?
I think so. I mean, once you start looking for abandoned places, you realize that they are everywhere and they're all around you, and often you just haven't noticed them. And so to some extent, the book could be never ending, and I am always finding other locations that I think would be interesting. But at the same time, the way that the book is organized is that each location essentially is a sort of case study of a bigger issue. So I started out by looking at Chernobyl. I knew that would be the poster child example, because when I was initially explaining what kind of book I was working on, that was the one that I said, a bit like the Chernobyl exclusion zone. So it's damaged, but at the same time, it's become this sort of strange, dangerous nature reserve. What does that tell us? And so that was a chapter that became about this uneasy equilibrium between the damage that's been done, but yet the benefits of the absence of people in that region. So when I was looking to write about carbon sinking, I looked for an example of farmland abandonment because that's where it's happening everywhere. When I was looking for a chapter about invasive species, I needed to find an abandoned site where there were a lot of invasive species, and I ended up going to an abandoned botanical garden in Tanzania. So some of those started from the places because I knew that the places had amazing stories, and I just had to figure out what they were really about. And then some of them started from the issues, so it was almost top down. I knew I wanted to write about this particular issue, so I needed to find a place where that was the case. And then I could use that place to explore the bigger issue. So I think in that way, it was both directions. And slowly over time, I figured out that it was probably going to be about 12 chapters. And in fact, I wanted to write a shorter book. I like shorter books because it's, I don't know, you can get to the point, and this book got a little bit longer than I planned. I want to be maybe more streamlined next time, but this time I was really trying to cut and I couldn't get rid of stuff, which is what writers always say. So,
well, it's difficult to eliminate things. Yes, and they're very interesting issues and places. And which place have experienced the biggest transformation from your point of view?
Maybe the most extreme site that was in my book might be maybe Montserrat. So this is a Caribbean island where they've had the volcanic eruption, and still probably more than a third of this whole island is still off limits. You can't live inside it. Some of it is a sort of buffer zone, so you can go in during the day, but you can't leave. And so that was the former capital town, which was quite a beautiful town, right on the sea's edge. It had mountains behind it, but the mountain that the volcano became a new mountain that had not existed before, and so the landscape has completely changed in a way that you don't really think can happen on a human timescale. And it has not swept away the town, although it looks like that. What it has done is it filled the town with ash so that most of the town is now invisible and it looks like a flat plain. And the suburbs, which are on the side of the mountains around it, are absolutely grown over with trees, with ferns, with all sorts of jungle type plants. And I think what was so striking about Montserrat is because of the climate, which is so hot and so wet, it has changed incredibly fast. So the eruptions were still going on into the early noughties, so the early 2000s, and yet it looks like an old civilization that collapsed hundreds of years ago, just because of the sheer speed that these plants can grow in those conditions. And so you see iguanas everywhere, you see mango trees growing in the police station. It was like walking into the set of a disaster movie, and I had to keep reminding myself that it's not like a film. The films are like this, this is the real thing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And was it also the most impressive for you? Because in the book, sometimes you expressed like the feelings you have in some places. So it was also the most impressive one for you personally, or not?
Yeah, perhaps. I find that for me and perhaps for everyone, fear tends to make experiences very vivid. And so inside the volcanic exclusion zone in Montserrat, it was very frightening because although the volcano had not erupted in some time, there was still the possibility that it might. And so we had to travel with radios to make sure we were in constant contact with the volcano observatory. We had to leave the engine running on the car. We had to leave the doors open on the car and the car facing for the exit because we would have only 90 seconds if it began to start rumbling again. So that sense of you have the pulse in the back of your head, which is probably fine. It's probably fine, but if it's not fine, we're going to have to go fast. And so I think that made it a very vivid experience. Also, for similar reasons, being in the Chernobyl exclusion zone because of a human's inability to sense when you are in danger in terms of radiation. That was quite frightening. Again, probably not in a great deal of physical danger for almost all of that trip, but because you can't tell when you go into dangerous sites, then that makes you very anxious as well. And occasionally I would have this radiation reader which would send off alarms which would tell you when you needed to be scared and you didn't know what direction to go, you know.
Yeah.
So that was funny. And then finally there's a small island off the north coast of Scotland, very close to where I live now, and this was I went there to look at these feral cattle, and being on this island where the wildlife is really not used to humans, it made the birds were very aggressive towards me, and so they would chase me. I had the Arctic terns were coming and scratching me and flying up because I accidentally walked into the area where they were nesting, and other species too would sort of come and, you know, threaten me. So I don't think they could do a lot of damage, but it was that sense of the whole island was just so angry that I was there, that that made that 24-hour period I spent alone on that island just a very sort of strangely frightening experience.
I can imagine. But it's very interesting what you say about Chernobyl, because it's like a silent threat that you can't see, but maybe well, not in your case, but if you stay there for a long time, at the end it's gonna come up. So I was thinking that it's something similar to what is happening with the planet, with climate change, with everything that we haven't seen the threat, but we are now seeing the consequences. So we also wanted to ask you, and that is also mentioned in the book, if you think that the planet is doomed to be an island of abandonment while we are still here, the humans.
You know, it's so difficult to know, and I think that that's why it is so confusing. We don't have a sense of whether it's already too late to stop the decline, or if, you know, with enough enthusiasm, enough action, we can turn the ship around, you know. And I think that level of uncertainty is disturbing to people, and that really interferes with people's motivation on a daily basis to do something about it, because this idea that maybe it's too late, that sort of hopelessness or despair can really get in people's minds. And so I don't think it's a particularly helpful way of thinking about it, that it's too late, that maybe everything will be lost. But you know, it's an open possibility. Nobody can really tell us the answer, and so we have to learn how to situate ourselves in this space, and to keep acting as though we still have hope.
Yeah, yes, a good message. Yeah. Well, I would like to know what is nature in your life, and also if do you have any project in hands that you can tell us?
Sure. So there's a lot of nature in my life, in as much as I live in the Orkney Islands in the north of Scotland, so I'm right by the sea. I'm outside a lot because I have a horse, so I'm always outside and riding and seeing the birds. And you know, is here we have a great change between the seasons. You know, at the moment we're going into winter, and so it's very dark. And we see all the birds that we had in the summer have left, and we now have different ones who come in for winter. So constantly you feel this changing of the seasons, the pattern of the year is changing around you, and you just have to notice it. I am working on another project, which is I guess about the environment and also about psychology. I'm getting a bit superstitious to talk about it because it's still not fully confirmed. So it's around the idea of wilderness and what it does to people, and whether it's a real place and what that means. But yeah, it's not 100% going ahead, but fingers crossed. I've been working on it. So
Thank you.
Also,
Yes.
it sounds very interesting. So we wanted now to finish the interview with one of our our section called Cheetah questions, that are questions that just you need to answer with the first idea that comes to your mind. So, well, we're going to start with a classic. If you could transform into an animal, which one would it be?
I would love to be an otter. You know, an otter, so they like you can be on land, you can also be on the sea. I don't know, they're very athletic. I think that would be great.
Yes, very great.
Where do you prefer to live? Chernobyl, Patterson, or Five Sisters Bing?
Through loyalty, I think I need to say the Five Sisters Bing. I have a lot of family around there.
Okay, so a place to get inspired for writing a new book. A museum of natural history, factory, or a burger restaurant.
Museum of Natural History. You know, you go in, you find so many stories in such a small place, and then that sends your brain ticking. So that's always the answer.
Very good. And finally, an alternative title for your book. A. Hope is everywhere. B. Clean your rubbish. Or C. Nature against human stupidity.
I think the final one is probably the right answer, but I'm going to go for option A.
Okay, we're gonna go for the hope. Okay, so thank you again for being with us, Carl. It has been very interesting, and really we think that your book is very necessary because it opens our eyes to reality and also give us hope, at least, to see that nature is resilient to overcome our difficulties. So yeah, thank you for.
Thank you very much. Os recordamos a todos que, bueno, este es el libro, que sepáis que vamos a hacer un sorteo, como todas las entrevistas en las redes sociales, y que esperamos que participéis. Bye.
Bye.